What's up everyone, Master Fox here today. With the ban list having dropped recently, I think now is an appropriate time to do a retrospective recap of the past format, going over what decks were good and the main tournament behemoths, as well as moving on to the future and kind of talking about what will remain competitive. I'm a prime component of logical reasoning, and so I think the best way to approach this is to look at the data and get our minds wrapped around some cold, hard numbers. Here's a pie chart that I made of the regional and YCS topping data from the start of the format in November all the way until the end of the format just last week. And there's no split in the data for the emergency list. Later on, I'll also show a bar graph which presents basically the same information, but it shows it based on the number of tops rather than a percentage, so it might give you a little bit of a different perspective on the game. Now, looking at the pie chart, we see that it's quite easy to make out Draco Pals as the strongest deck with the greatest dominance over this format, taking well over 1/3 of the tops in all of the major tournaments, which is quite impressive. However, we also notice that there is a large amount of diversity in the format as well, with the game being split between 5 or so decks, depending on how you count these decks. Following behind Draco Pals is the mighty behemoth that is Monarch. Even without any data, I can confidently say that Monarch is likely one of the more represented decks at events, and this is at all levels due to the relatively low cost of the deck and the ease of piloting it. With this, it's no surprise that Monarchs were one of the most dominant decks. Now, why do I think they ended up behind Draco Pals? Well, from my own experience and what I've seen, Monarchs suffer from brick hands, and as all of you may well know, in the long run, in larger tournaments, it becomes more likely that you will brick, and bricking against decks like Cosmo basically spells death in 1 to 2 turns, and the same goes for Draco Pals. These decks can just pump out too much damage too quickly for you to afford to brick. Additionally, the Draco Pal matchup for Monarchs isn't exactly a slam dunk matchup. If you can get a domain up in the first few turns, then it might be a cakewalk, but without it, Monarchs have tons of difficulty dealing with large swarming fields. They just can't answer massive numbers of monsters on the field at the same time, especially when those monsters can be things like Rafflesia and Naturia Beast. All of these factors put Monarch a notch below Draco Pals. Moving on, we have Cosmos, which I strongly believe would have been a strong second to Draco Pals had it not been for Monarchs. Game 1 against Monarchs is actually a very rough time for Cosmos now, and that spells a difficult fight for them. Add to that the fact that Monarch players are flooding events and you're taking down a bunch of potential Cosmo decks at the higher tables as Monarchs are destroying the Cosmo players early on so that they can't make it further on in the events. Because I do think that Cosmos have a decent Draco Pal matchup. Had it not been for Monarchs, Cosmos would have definitely been the de facto number 2 deck, if not the number 1 deck. Lastly, I want to talk about Burning Abyss and Phantom Knights together. This data doesn't show the separation between these two because they kind of blur. Burning Abyss started out in the format as its own deck, and then Phantom Knights kind of joined them in later on. I don't know exactly how this breaks down those two different decks, but my assumption is that PK Fire is counted as Phantom Knights, and the early Burning Abyss tops is counted as pure Burning Abyss. But anyways, Burning Abyss has been a sleeper deck throughout this whole format, and tons of people have been saying even decks like Merlantian were possibly better than Burning Abyss. But Burning Abyss has been a silent machine, earning tops sporadically here and there, but consistently enough to be seen at the top tables. Now combine them with the Phantom Knights, and we have a sleeper deck that's ready to strike down and sink its teeth into the upcoming meta. That's what I believe our future holds. PK Fire will be a very, very real deck and is poised to be one of the best decks, but I believe discussion will be left to another video. That's all I have on this retrospective metagame analysis of the November 2015 format. That's it for this video. Tell me what you guys think in the comments section below. Give this video a thumbs up, and I will see you guys in my next video. Thank you.